That's it. So this project is about time. And about time is a manifestation of my rage. My name is Sofia. I'm from Costa Rica, and I'm 28 years old. When I was 26, I quit a job that made me miserable. And after 11 years of working, and realizing that I had 39 years left to work and no will left in me, I thought, this is too much. I'm not even 30 yet, and I can't do this anymore. I was profoundly depressed, powerless, but most of all, outraged. And I wanted to turn this rage, this personal feelings, into something understandable for a collective audience. Or specifically, turn them into a relatable story. Because I kept thinking that I'm sure I'm not the only one who goes through this. And turns out that I'm not. That this is bigger than me. So let me show you some examples. There's actually proof from the World Health Organization that working long hours can kill you faster. Right now, my country is trying to approve a law that'll push us to these overworking limits without the overtime paid compensation. And even in Japan, they have a term for death from overwork. Death from overwork, that's in the dictionary. Scary, isn't it? Anyway, given the proposed topic of heist for this exhibition, I did a time heist, which I like to define as the systematic robbery of the time we get to live. And I have a couple of challenges for this. First, don't make it too personal, especially because I'm a foreigner and not all my experiences translate well into this context. And second, the city of Barcelona is quite diverse and cosmopolitan, so how could I find something universal enough that can relate to such a varied audience? Considering that, when talking about time, I decided that this exhibition discusses life, work, leisure, and rest. And given that the key of building a relatable experience is connecting through emotions, now we're going to explore the moods of this exhibition, the feelings I wanted people to get throughout this journey. I classified them in whether it makes the visitor feel personally good, neutral, or bad. Now let's go through the sections. The introduction is the entry point, the what is this exhibition about moment, the what is it about time, curiosity. Years of labor is about duties. It's the anvil drop, the moment of despair, the is this really it moment? How many hours are left? It's about paid time off and geographical inequality. Thus, given this, I expected to get either an empathetic shock or personal indignation, depending on who sees it, because experiences may be varied. Days without rest, it's about vacation. And same as the previous one, identification varies on the viewer. So I was expecting either empathy or frustration. But I couldn't have the viewers leave the gallery depressed. So this section also has a very interesting piece meant to lift the mood and guide them towards a more hopeful end, realizing that we deserve better. Of course, the section names or contents are based in time units. The first piece is a brief reflection about the irrecoverable nature of time and a way of framing the exhibition, poetically speaking. Also, a QR code with all the texts in Spanish for the people who don't speak English. Years of Labor has one piece, the bigger picture. It's a timeline of our entire life, all the years we go to school, all the jobs we'll have, all the years we'll spend in retirement, and our probability of hospitalization. Educational data comes from the Spanish government, employment times from a study analyzing job permanence and generation, and health and retirement stats come from journals citing the Spanish National Statistics Institute, and the World Health Organization. The timeline was built in wood, so each plank represents an event. The length of the plank is the duration of the event in years, and these were placed in 4 rows or categories. And the wood deterioration represents our bodies and minds' decay throughout the years. This piece intended to show the amount of lifetime we don't own, and it's also a stark reminder of the fact that our bodies deteriorate and our time doesn't come back. When looking close, each plank has a legend of what it represents and some statistics related to it. And seen from afar comes the grim realization: how many of our years belong to our obligations and how insignificant many of them seem in the bigger picture. This is how the whole piece looked like, the laid out path, from year 0 to year 82, the median death age in Spain. Next is how many hours are left with the vacation hourglasses. These are hourglasses showing the cost of 1 hour of paid time off in 6 different member countries of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So here comes the math. These times were calculated using the annual leave days and the workday length of each country to first obtain the total hours of paid time off a person gets a year. And then I divided the average annual hours into the number we got before to obtain the total cost in worked hours of 1 hour of vacation. So each hourglass represents a country, and the amount of sand is the aforementioned cost. So this piece intends to show the value of leisure time and an instance of geographical privilege. After adding everything up, turns out that the top 3 countries are European, and the bottom 3 are 1 Asian country and 2 Latin American countries. Incidentally, finding out that my own country was second to last was one of the most infuriating things that I've ever had to learn so far. Anyway, data for these calculations was gathered from the OECD, the International Labour Organization, government institutions, government-sponsored websites, and a syndication platform with translated extracts of law, because I don't speak all of those languages. And this is how the piece looked like. Hourglasses for the 3 countries with the highest and the lowest paid time off costs in the OECD. Days Without Rest is about vacation, or lack thereof. The first piece is Unease Beach, a beach with 4 objects with statistics from a survey made in the United States about work and holidays. The color area of the object correlates to the percentage, and the object used correlates semantically. This piece is about how work invades our vacation. And it's a literal beach full of unease, and it's actual beach sand. The main object, a beach chair, shows that 82% of respondents work while on vacations. And what I meant with semantics earlier is that, for instance, there's a ball, an annoying object, if it hits you, that contains a statistic about disturbing coworkers. The 2 shovels represent cooperation, and the beer cooler has a nested statistic. The second piece of Days Without Rest is the ultimate image representation of the self-repression we do to ourselves. So I got a bunch of pictures from some Instagram hashtags, my office today, workation, remote work, and turned them into a song. Why? Because of the irony. You see, these pictures are usually portrayed as aspirational on social media. This is how a successful entrepreneur does holidays, right? Well, personally, I find this quite dystopic. I mean, are we not even allowed to rest now? So, given that the holidays and music are usually associated with rest, evasion, and enjoyment, I combined these 2 elements with similar meanings to evoke the opposite feeling. And doing that, we get irony by juxtaposition. So this becomes a satire of hustle culture and the romanticization of work-invading holidays using generative music and an Excel file. So let me explain the system. For each picture, the laptop size represents the note duration, like that, or very fast. And the laptop position is the musical note, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, that. So, I made a happy Hawaiian song to go with these horrifying images. Because this is how vacations should look like according to modern capitalism. But there's more. I also set up a QR code with a link to a website in which visitors could answer the question, if you've ever worked during a vacation, how much did you actually enjoy? The results of the vote were projected in the main screen, and the winner set the soundtrack of the exhibition. As you can see, most people aren't fans of workations. Interestingly enough, 3 people said that they loved working in the beach. Anyway, having 5 moods meant that I made 5 variations of the song. The I like that song is slightly slower, and the I didn't mind even more. But for the negative ones, I had to get creative. A tritone in music is an interval composed of 3 adjacent whole notes. When the same melody is played in 2 tritonal scales at the same time, it is dissonant because of the distance between the notes. The bass melody is in an F major scale, a classic for Hawaiian ukulele music. This, together with an A major transposition, sounds like this. But the biggest stridency is heard when combining the melody with a B major transposition, the farthest note of the tritone. So yes, this is music mathematically designed to be annoying. Which, by the way, I also used for the promotional video of this exhibition. The Instagram post was also inspired by this piece, a laptop in the beach, using a Word document. As I made 5 songs, I wanted to be able to show them to visitors, so I made a remote that allowed me to control the music of the exhibition from my phone from anywhere. Because also the gallery manager sometimes got annoyed with the results, so I made her a favor and switched to the nicer songs sometimes. And the conclusion piece is a chiringuito board with a menu of the day, the key takeaway points of this exhibition. It reads, just to conclude, please remember, idealization of hustle culture is harmful. Overworking is actually bad for you. You need rest. It's possible to do more with less time. The 4-day work week proposal is a great initiative, for instance. So even among all our duties, it's okay to take some time to ourselves. That's it, a simple, reassuring message to make us think about our time. Also, the references cited here are an analysis of diseases attributed to overwork, a book about how rest is actually necessary, and info about the actual 4-day work week, not the horrifying Costa Rican version. Now that I've shown the whole thing, I wanted to point out the art direction, the graphical and material elements that bring everything together, including my outfit for the opening day. Sand, the wood, and beach. Why? Because I wanted to evoke the rest we actually deserve, to sit back, relax, and enjoy the waves. And in the end, I noticed that people felt powerless. They got angry. They got surprised and curious. Some shared my feelings, and the ones who didn't, they told me theirs. Because About Time sparked a conversation, not only between me and the visitors, but among themselves. Groups of strangers starting talking just because they were in the exhibition together. And they talked about work, about life, about holidays, about privilege, about rest, and most importantly, about the time we own and deserve. Of course, there were some things that I wished had gone better. I should have incentivized voting in a better way because we had far more visitors than the ones who voted. Maybe having a direct interaction in the exhibition would have done the trick, or printing a bigger QR code. Also, I noticed 2 tours in that this was better with conversations, not tours. My exhibition had a better impact with smaller, more focused groups because they could talk among themselves, they could discuss, and having exhibitions, the visitors share their experiences to me was super valuable. Of course, better carpentry. Fun fact, it's the first time in my entire life that I have touched wood or designed a product. And I wish I had taken more and better pictures. I'm also not a photographer. But in the end, I worked hard, maybe too hard, risking my health and sanity, of course. But I got to understand my anger from a scientific data perspective and turned it into art by combining research, math, carpentry, music, coding, storytelling, and design into a cohesive set of pieces that could explain my rage and make it relatable. And for next steps, I want to keep spreading this message somehow, that we deserve better, and we can have a healthier relationship with work. And given that I started with my story, I found fit to give it personal conclusions. So as for me, at least I found the will to work now. Actually, I need to. And as a designer, I strive to find more stories within data and keep playing with complexity in odd and creative ways. So thank you for your time and for listening to my story.
So thank you and congratulations for this happy and cheerful presentation and so on. So I think you've done great, and you displayed a series of outputs that I think are really nice. I strongly appreciate the music one, which I think it's brilliant, of the highest level I can imagine. And my only reflection, which is a little bit what I mentioned with Zoe before, is the assumption of time as a relation with work and as a relation with the money you get of things is it's not that clear. And for me, the most critical part of it is opposing, especially for me that I hate going to the beach, opposing the beach as the paradigm of what I believe you're fighting against. That is the idea of holidays of all of us, people with salaries in the world in which we live. So, I mean, congratulations, but I suggest you to reflect on some assumptions that we give for granted and that are maybe part of the whole soap in which we are. However, I do really appreciate that this metaphor surely helped people to understand what you were asking them to reflect on. So on that side, congratulations again.
Sophia, congratulations. I really enjoyed it here and there, and I really like the music bit. So I would have done it like the central piece of the exhibition, because there was like so much difference between this piece and the others. And when you saw the others, you felt like the music piece was like under, like exhibit there. You could see the whole exhibition without paying attention to the music part, and I think I would have put much effort in that piece. I think with just that piece, and of course with like more interaction and so on, you could have done like an incredible work. I think it was really clever from your part to do that one. and it reflects everything that you want it to. So you didn't need all the rest. I think it.
Congratulations. I think the only comment that I'm gonna do here, because I already saw the midterm presentation you did, and I love it. It's that I think irony is a great driver when telling stories, and people feel like way more lighter relating to them. So I think tackling the matter of time and how are we living our lives in this meta work mode through irony is a great driver to tell the story. So congratulations on this.
Congratulations, Sofia. I want to share the highlights for me were that you decided to embrace the challenge of presenting your exhibition in context, like being aware that you are in Barcelona. That I noticed that you had QR in for like Spanish. So you made a very smart use of the QR and awareness of context, which is, I think, important when it comes to exhibitions. And also, I like the idea, as others share, the music beat and the idea of irony by juxtaposition. I think that's very interesting. Also, how you managed to make some of this data very tangible and relatable. And then, something that the kind of emotion that your presentation sparked on me was curiosity. I'm very curious about your background. So this is a question. What is your background?
I'm a UX designer.
You're a UX designer?
Yes.
You don't edit video, or do you have a musical background?
I'm also a hobby singer, and I just like to do a lot of things.
No, because the rhythm of your presentation, I felt like watching, there's on Vimeo a John Baldessari video that has this rhythm. So I felt like watching a video. That's how well the presentation was. The rhythm was outstanding, and then the music piece it was kind of for me it was like a high resolution version of your relationship with rhythm that I feel is super important in this kind of work. So yeah, congratulations.
Hello. Hello. Hi everyone. My name is Tomás Belagamba. I'm 25, and today I wanted to show you my exhibition and my project for this masters. So first of all, I wanted to ask you a very quick question that I want you to hold into your heads a little bit. So, what was the last photo you took? Or what about last week or last year? If your first thought was to look into your phone for the photo of that time, I want first to tell you that that reaction, that gesture of reaching into your pocket for the answer, is a story that is well worth telling. Because my exhibition tackles a very particular topic, or at least I think it does, which is memory, but not only memory, but memory and technology. As in, if I told you the definition of memory, which is the ability to store and remember information, experiences, and people, the line between if I'm defining our own memory and technological memory would become blurry very, very quickly. And I wanted to tackle this kind of dependence we have that affects us in terms of remembering and forgetting information. Because we have externalized our memory in a number of ways across time, through writing, through the press, and of course through libraries and books. So why ask this question now? Well, because 4.6 billion people are connected to the internet every day, and if you double that number, you get the amount of phones and computers that are connected to it every single day. What I mean by this is that history, or at least reality as we know it, is not being registered through our own ears and eyes as much as it's being filtered through a screen or a sensor. That's why I'm not going with a heist for this project, but rather a bargain, something that is exchanged, at least consciously or partly unconsciously, willingly, between memory and the convenience of technology. And to ask, is memory obsolete? Have we come to a point that it has been replaced by something newer and better? For this project, I walked in with a lot of assumptions that I needed to deal with, and fortunately, there were a couple of cases, a couple of sources that helped me figure out a lot of things. One of which were a survey made by the Schenectady College Union in the United States, which basically went around serving the general public of the US, asking them to either agree or disagree with different statements, and then pitting them against the opinion of experts, which were a lot of professors and researchers who were really knowledgeable about memory for more than 10 years. And I found out a really good set of insights from that. First of all, would you agree, for example, that human memory works like a video camera, accurately recording the events we see and hear? Well, for me, at the time of this project starting, it was kind of like that, and the public seems to agree as well. But then it doesn't. I figured it doesn't work like that, because it's our own images that we produce through our eyes and through our senses are heavily manipulated by us, by what we feel and what we know, and this also. And this also relates to how we experience memory changing. Memory, we think that it might be able to change or not, but at the end of the day, memory changes all of the time because of memory reconsolidation, which is something that I will touch more on later. But as a basic idea, when we remember something, when we remember information, we are constantly updating it, which means that the more we remember a moment, the farther away it moves from the original thing. And of course, a very important question, would you convict someone if the only evidence you had was yours or other people's confident eyewitness testimony? Should that be enough evidence? Fortunately, the opinion of the public was more leaning on the negative side, and the professors were clearly in a disagreement stance. Because if that's the only evidence that you have, you might as well have none. Memory is a very finicky thing, and misidentification is one of the leading causes that innocent people are thrown into jail. And another one by the Kaspersky Lab security firm, which made a really insightful survey, which was around serving people from the US and Europe and taking out some data from their answers. As for example, do you consider your digital devices as an extension of your brain? Well, a lot of Americans think so, and a lot of Europeans too. Do you think that your cell phone has everything you will ever need to know? Again, 44% and 34% respectively were distributed among Americans and Europeans. Giving this kind of sensation of, when faced with simple questions, have would turn to the internet. And about 30% of the people who answered this survey would forget an online fact as soon as they had used it to answer a question that they had been given. Or in better terms, as the doctor, as the head doctor Betsy Sparrow would put it, when we are challenged, when our own knowledge is challenged, we expect the computer to correct it. And it's related a lot with a certain term called digital amnesia, which is the experience of forgetting information you trust a digital device to store and remember for you, and which would become a centerpiece for what I would want to do with this work. And this is what it would be before you forget. So first of all, the communication campaign was a very small poster collection in which I included several well-known icons of popular culture, from music to art to movies and television. And I merged them together in this sort of ironic idea of sometimes things are just not as you remember them. And for the space, I wanted to include two distinct objectives: to display the relationship of human and technological memory, and use the pieces to generate questions to visitors. Because I wanted to make a tour in which I could talk about the people who came in. And it goes as follows. We have the intro, the great filter, have you ever, Microcosmos, plastic deal, post-mortem, and before you forget. These are all of the pieces. All pieces that relate thematically to remembering or forgetting something, and relating thematically about talking about the people who are there. So let's get into it. The Great Filter is a piece that is based around the 7 most common applied memory biases, and it looks on paper something like this, with various filters, one behind each other, but with a materiality that lets you see through it, so you can see the unity of the symbols that represent each bias, but also with a material that actually dims light, so you will actually be able to see the unity, but your vision will become blurrier as you go through. And these are not only the only, so the biases are absent-mindedness, transience, misattribution, suggestibility, bias, blocking, and persistence. But I made sure to remember the people who were there, that memory is a series of memory is a series and succession of filters, and that even though I explained 7 of them here, there are about 23 more biases explained by the Memory Bias Codex, which is an algorithmic system made by doctors that classifies and organizes biases. And these are only the ones related to memory just. Next was Have You Ever, which in this effort I took it upon myself to actually try to introduce technology a little bit more directly in a small video that explains the cell phone as a mnemonic device. So as this goes by, I actually represent a small diagram in which I show the people who are actually to be able to be there. The space is around comfortably able to hold around 100 people. So what kind of the space was about what kind of assumptions would people have if they would be in this space? How would the distribution be? I used the data of the Kaspersky lab to calculate how much people would be distributed in percentages. For this. So right next was Microcosmos, which was a small piece about how our devices store images and how much it translates in a year. So using the data of a startup social app called Magisto, I discovered that there is a clear distinction among the technology that you use and related to how much photos you store or take. If you're an Android user, you take about 110 photos per month. If you're an Apple user, you take about 180. Regardless of the technology you use, you will be on an average of 150 photos a month, which when we look at this in a year straight, it cascades into 1,800 photos a year, which was something that I wanted to convey very clearly to the visitors as a cascading fall of information that is constantly falling on top of you. And as this goes by, the only thing that I can ask you is, do you have spare time to organize all of these images? And do you know how much time, do you know how much you want to leave behind? Plastic Deal was a piece that goes around like this. Practice makes perfect. And it's about the second half of memory consolidation, which is the fact that when we're exposed to the same information repeatedly, it takes less time to activate the next time. And it follows a curve. So imagine that you just learned something in class, for example. And that's the moment that you learn the most of it at that time. But as time goes by, information decay sets in, which means that around 1 week later, if you haven't reviewed that information, you will lose about 70% of what you learned. You will lose the fidelity of the content of that memory. And by the end of the month, you will be grasping for straws because you will have to learn that memory from scratch. But actually, you can set up timer intervals in order to practice. So you can pass on along that memory to long-term memory. It works kind of like a muscle memory, but we still need to practice it a lot. On a darker note, post-mortem is a piece about how much time have you spent on your phone and how it translates to time. So for this, I wanted to make it into a stone slab because it takes up on a particular piece. It is a tombstone of you that represents data answering the questions laid out before. So let's say that you're lucky and you have the average lifespan of an European, and it's 80 years. About 9 years of that time you will spend behind a phone, and this is just for the phone. And around half of that time, or about 4.8 years, you will spend making photos, messages, and traces of yourself, which means that you will be nurturing a persona for 5 years that will live on even after you're gone, you are deceased, or you forget about the password to access the account. Things that will let other people know you and meet you without ever seeing you in real life. And if you want to know how much this translates to, it's about 23%, and only for the phone. So you're spending about 5 years or 1/10 of your life nurturing a digital avatar. And this is how it looks like. I wanted to make it really impactful, so visitors will take like all of this information in, because it's really related to digital death, or as in not accessing an account for a long time means that account eventually gets memorialized. So in a sort of way, death is kind of a forgetfulness state. And this is really important because what I wanted to show is that there is already a lot of information on this. This information that I use for the calculations and what I'm about to show you came from reports of Facebook itself. They estimate that by the next century, there will be as many dead people's profiles as there are people alive, which means that 5 billion dead people's profiles multiplied by those 5 years of constant data nurturing makes a number that I would not be able to fit in the screen. And why is this important? Because I wanted to touch on the subject that memory is not only about forgetfulness and remembering, but how law intervenes in these cases. When it comes to Facebook and social media, there is a really sensible gray area between who gets the videos, the photos, the messages that you left behind even after you're gone. And lastly, before you forget, for this piece, I wanted to do something different. Up until this point, I have been throwing bricks at the heads of my visitors and throwing them all kinds of questions. They talked to me, interrupted me, stepped in to talk about their own kind of stuff, and I really appreciate it. So I wanted to do something for them. I wanted them the decision to choose, and that's what I wanted to do with these bookmarks and these boards. With these boards, I propose them to write a memory and choose whether they would like to embrace forgetfulness and write a memory they would rather forget, or embrace the inevitable technological advancement and write something that they would rather remember forever even if it means that they would forget it afterwards. That they would have somewhere where that memory would stay. It works like a chart system. So people would put the bookmarks representing the two axes, from how old they are right at the moment and the moment that memory first started. So it works like this, like a chart, and it's pretty easy to analyze. The distribution was mostly on the average of 30 years old because the people who came to the exhibition were really, really young, with just a couple of exceptions. And of course, that reflects on the distribution of years, because when it comes down to how much people were posting on each year, the most amount of things people wanted to remember were on the years that they were already growing up, that they were little and they may have been, well, growing up as people. Meanwhile, the most things they wanted to forget were on the last 10 years, which makes perfect sense once I thought about it. Because as we live and as our own memories develop, we eventually forget things that we no longer want to remember. But the things that we want to forget right now stay with us in the recent years. And I think that was the most interesting part of all of my exhibition. I actually encourage people to engage in conversation, to interrupt me, to step in, to talk with other people. And that's what I found so interesting in all of it. I wanted to, when I watched them talk to me, a complete stranger that told them that they would die, leaving a 5-year avatar behind, someone who told them that they would probably forget all of the things they know, or all of the things they remember would change eventually. It was really inspiring. I wanted to construct more ways to give people the chance to actually choose and tell me what they wanted to say, to improve the construction quality, because some of them are really rough, and figure out more questions to make visitors, and of course to find a balance. Tony and Anne helped me a lot with the storytelling, because I was running constantly into problems of how do I explain all of this stuff to people who don't know me? How do I make people talk to me when they don't know me? And how do I show data based around these themes that are kind of out there, abstract in a sort of way, which have no particular, that we don't have much of a particular physical contact every day. But ultimately, what we choose is what we tell. And I was really glad to be able to do this project with the people, because even if I thought at first that they were simple questions, people were completely stumped with some of them. Some people were really mad about the bookmarks. A couple of them told me that their memory would not fail them, not a single day. And some of them told me that they didn't want even to write a bookmark. They would rather talk to me about the stuff that they wanted to say. And I was surprised about how well it sparked their curiosity. Because people approach me and approach other people with a lot of things on their mind. They wanted to forget moments of loss, of bullying, of pain, of sadness, and of death. But on the other spectrum, they wanted to remember and hold on to so much things. They wanted to remember birthdays, food, homemade food, love, travel, and death too. And most of all, the most prized thing they wanted to hold on to were their parents. And I think that's actually really inspiring for something to talk about to a stranger that you have never met before. To tell them that you recognize things that maybe are not so well granted. And that's what I wanted to talk about. An exhibition that it's about not only my opinion and my work, but yours too. Because when I set to work on it, I wanted to make it about the people. How about you? Thanks very much for coming.
Well, congratulations and thank you. Let me say that I consider your proposal, and maybe even the exhibition that I wasn't there, and also your presentation as complex and diverse, which doesn't mean nothing good or bad. I think that you claim or you try to achieve a level of complexity with many issues related to technology, to memory, to who we are, to many things. I was completely confused for 3/4 of your presentation, but maybe when I remember it, I think you achieve something. But on the other hand, I think that you have to. Well, it's really nice how you explained the interaction with the visitors to the exhibition. Maybe you should reflect on the need of more clear narrative to express even complex and so diverse approach and terms and issues you wanted to tackle. So that's it. I think that it's really nice, and I have to like figure out in my mind how it all gets solved or something like that.
I think that, well, congratulations. I think that the research part is astounding. You touched, like you were saying, like many things related to memory, and it's really so interesting. But after, like, while formalizing those various subjects, I think that there's still some work to do there. In order to make bolder statements and more comprehensible statements, because since it's so broad, it's very sometimes I feel like a little bit lost, like him. So maybe we need to direct a little bit more, no, the attention. Yeah, I think that's congratulations.
I can say I agree with them, but I can say that it's very well designed. I think there's a lot of information, and you're trying to guide us very well. It was nice to see what the information that you were sharing, but it is true that some things that maybe we would need to better understand and better to remember, because I really love the idea that before you forget. I think that as a communication concept, it's nice. I think the way that you were executing those posters, I think that we're brave to do things like this. But that's it. It's very well done. Thank you.
Congratulations, Tomás, for being so brave into tapping into something as memory. I mean, when you introduced the topic, the presentation, I was very excited because I'm personally very interested in such complex topics as memory time, and some of have been already been explored. But memory is a tough one, so you're brave. I think you did a really nice try also. I guess I could feel from what you shared in the presentation that you maybe experienced tensions into the intersections of memory with like convenience, technology, death, attention, so there was like I guess struggles into dealing with such promising concept as well, but I think I give you, for example, my perspective in context. So I'm a Colombian living in Barcelona for the last 13 years, and currently when you use the word memory, what comes to mind, and this is happening actually in Spain as well, there are the topic of memory is very important when it comes to data. And the social role of data. So if you're really interested in memory, I feel that the topic is really interesting. Take a look at how different organizations, civil organizations, governments, researchers are dealing with conflict data. In particular, the case of Colombia is very interesting how they are actively using data to try to heal a society through collective memory. So that's like an invitation into they followed an open source approach. It's very interesting to dig into that, and I guess it's more than anything an invitation to dig deeper into the memory and its branches if you're really interested into it, and then also thinking of how in terms of the presentation of how to bring more elements of everything that you learn in these months when it comes to using like slides and visuals. Because I just feel like there was maybe what Albert was trying to articulate. There was a lot of text going like alongside your narration, that at some point it was kind of also like an exercise of our relationship with memory in a way. So I like that as a provocation, but I also think that there's a lot that can be improved when it comes to presenting visually pieces of data and then the narrative, how they weave. But again, congratulations for tapping on and bringing this topic.
Thank you.
Okay, and last but not least, Thomas. I know it's complex to be the last. The attention span gets shortened, but I'm sure you'll figure it out.
It's on. Welcome everybody. As Pau said already, I'm Thomas. Yeah. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. My entire computer. Hold on 1 second. Right, it's working. Again, welcome everybody. I'm Thomas. I'm more a software developer. You will notice it throughout the presentation. It's not that perfectly designed as all the other ones, but I tried. So the project, The Gift, Terms and Conditions Apply. The Gift is a research about the impact and reasons behind China's infrastructure investment focused on Africa, but this is a global phenomenon. This is happening all over the world. Why this project? I will give you some background. It all started with an article I read in a Dutch newspaper, and this article was about massive wind farms that were being built all over Flat Holland to provide green energy to the people there. It would be cheap and sustainable. Yet companies like Google and Microsoft found out about this, and they said, this is great. We'll build data centers there under the premises of economic impulse for this more empty regions, with the result of them getting all the green energy in a way that the local population was only left with not that much improvement in their situation and no more green energy and a bunch of ugly windmills everywhere. And this pissed me off royally that this was happening in a country as well organized as Holland. So if we look at this through the eyes of the heist, our general team, I thought this is a clear heist of infrastructure from the people itself. But it was a massive challenge to find any data about this or any other examples of this same type of practice happening in other places. So after quite a bit of Googling and rethinking, I came across China's infrastructure investment loans, which is in a way also the stealing of infrastructure, but in a different way. In this case, they use infrastructure to gain certain power over other countries or influence by the means of providing infrastructure to other countries. So, as I said, why Chinese infrastructure and what is the relevance? First of all, it's a global occurrence. This is happening all over the world, from South America to Europe and mostly Africa and Asia. It's a big thing on the economic impact for both receiving countries and China itself. Political influence plays a big role for China, since they see it as a way to build allegiance with poorer countries that often cannot build this type of infrastructure themselves, and to gain through this allegiance influence on the international political scale. And a big reason for the past 20 years of why this was happening was natural resources. Since China is an economy that relies on manufacturing, it's like their primary economic income generator, and for manufacturing you need natural resources, oil, minerals, all this stuff, and Africa has a lot of that. So what is the narrative? It is all about the gift, because what China does is they provide these loans and this infrastructure under very favorable conditions with very big promises of why this is that great. So I thought it is almost like receiving a gift. Like when you receive a gift, it's quite an exciting moment, everybody is happy. It's the same for this type of countries, but there are some other things happening. So the first step would be the gift. Then what happens after you receive a gift? You unpack it, you unwrap it, but then come the terms and conditions in this case, because China does want their investment repaid over some certain amount of time, often in case being the terms and conditions. And then the final question: are these gifts either more a poison or a blessing for these countries? I will go over each individual piece in the exhibition that represented these chapters. So the first chapter is the gift. And the gift is all about the attractiveness of these loans. These loans are offered to these countries often with very minimal conditions. China says, we'll not interfere with your local policy making, will not ask you to privatize certain sectors, whilst yet the IMF and World Bank often have a lot of conditions before a country can even apply for a loan, making this very, very tempting for this type of country. They say this is an easy way to get this type of money, so it's very tempting. So the piece, millions and billions is about the amount of money China has invested overall in all African countries over the past 20 years, seeing billion right there at the top. Perdona. So this was an interactive piece, and the piece was about showing each country as a China-fied dollar bill and representing each amount of investments each country has received over the past 20 years and the scale, the difference between all countries. It was an interactive piece, so you could zoom in and see the 6 countries all the way on the left, and if you zoomed out or moved to the left and right, you could see the amount of scale difference between the countries respectively, seeing that some countries received massive amounts of money while others almost received nothing. You could click and then see the amount of money. I will let it play for a bit, and in the end you can see, if you zoom out, how big, one country, Angola in this case, has received almost 30% of all money. So some other close-ups. It was an interactive piece, people could interact in the same way. Then comes the part of the unwrapping of this gift. And the unwrapping is really the moment when China built all the infrastructure in the relevant country. And since often these loans do not include any actual money to these countries, only promises that they will build airports, hydropower dams, all this type of critical infrastructure that a country needs to be able to function on an international economic level. And often in cases, they bring in their own companies, their own workers to build this type of infrastructure. So the local African people there have very little benefit to no benefit of this actual big project, except of the results of this project. So when there's more power, that's beneficial. And yet, since China was that easy in providing the loans already, they also are quite easy on an environmental level. They don't, and when, for example, they build a hydropower dam, they don't mind that much if a few villages along the way get flooded. They say that's just cost of benefit for the country, right? So this is the impacts that are locally made, but yet this type of infrastructure provides a major economic impulse for these countries. A quick 2 graphs just to give you some context. Left is the GDP of Africa from 1970 to 2020, and on the right is all the infrastructure projects that have been initiated each year from 2000 to 2020 by China. I constructed a wall, since construction is all done on cement and bricks. It's a major construction material. So I thought, what better way to represent this all as a cemented brick. So I cemented one brick wall representing the GDP of Africa in the white. So this is from 1970s. The white is all the way to 2020 is the GDP see about like in 1980s, $380 billion worth, all the way to about 2015, it five-folded the economy to what was the number again? 85 trillion US dollars. And you see in the green all the graphs, that's the amount of critical infrastructure projects that China has built. So you can see that there is a massive economic growth, and at the same time as this infrastructure is being built. Yet this is not a direct relationship, but infrastructure plays the foundations of this economic growth, because without good infrastructure you cannot have strong economic growth. Some close-up shots of the project. Then comes chapter 3, the terms and conditions of the loan, the investments China has provided. And in often cases this comes as political influence or as natural resources, since, as I said, China relies upon a lot of natural resources to get their economy, to keep their economy running. So they ask of these countries to either repay them partially in national resources or to be aligning themselves politically. So the first pass is Red Wind. This is about the political influences China asked of these countries that they invest in. And a good example of this was the Hong Kong National Security Law. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but I will give you a quick recap. In 2020, Hong Kong lost its independence from China, and they were returned back to China. And during this time, China implemented this new law, and they said this is for the security of our country. And what it really did is it reduced the human rights in Hong Kong and freedom of speech. So the UN created a vote on this, and in this vote, about 53 countries voted in favor of China, saying it's their country, they have the right to decide what happens in their country. Yet 35 other countries all said, no, this is like degradation of human rights, this should not be acceptable. Of these 53 countries, half were African countries. If we know there's 52 African countries on the African continent, that's about half of all of them unanimously voted yes without much hesitation, and yet the other half was not against, they were just being neutral or silent in this way, showing the amount of political allegiance China is building throughout this type of investment. The piece was a piece of 8 flags representing the approximately 50-50 split in Africa, of showing 4 countries being blown by the wind of the van, showing the influence China is providing, and yet the other countries standing close by, being silent and not saying anything against what China is asking of them. Another shot. Then we have the piece of called Collateral Earth. This is about the amount of resources China asked to be harvested to repay a loan. I took the loan of Angola, which was the biggest loan they provided, 40 billion, and I asked myself, how can I visualize the amount that needs to be mined, either in oil or in ore, to repay such a loan? As you see here, this is the Niagara Falls. If you would have to repay $40 billion worth of money only by pumping oil out of the ground, you could spend 5 hours watching this Niagara Falls, and all the water in that time would represent about the amount of oil you need to pull out of the ground, which is quite an incredible amount. But in case you need to mine it, if your country doesn't have any oil, again, 40 billion, that would mean you could cover the whole of Barcelona in a 4-centimeter thick layer of stone, in a way, like perfectly unanimous stone, or that would equal about the 245 Burj Khalifas, just as a reference. So how was this piece made? I decided to buy an oil barrel because I wanted to show the size of what an oil barrel is, and I needed some rocks from an actual place. So I went all the way to Santa Coloma to buy an oil barrel from some sketchy dudes and walk it in a trolley all the way back to Sanz. That took approximately 2.5 hours. And then I went with a backpack to Castel de Faus, to my local climbing spot, collected some rocks, which individually were not that heavy actually, but put all together was an incredible amount of weight. And I took them into the train all the way to Sanz as well, which was a wonderful experience. So the piece, this is the final, the representation of this. This was a piece of showing the amount of money in the middle as two $10,000 stacks, and a barrel which goes is approximately traded at like $100, depending on a world, the current state of the world. And the same for a cubic meter of stones is also about ore is also about $100. So there was like this reference of like this 2 stacks of money You can see it there as well, and here the wires would go all the way to the roof, representing that if you filled this all perfectly stacked with $100 bills, you would need to go to the roof 13,000 times, and there were some other metrics, like, for example, 121 stacked Eiffel Towers of money, perfect stacked $100 bills to repay this loan. And you could relate that to the oil barrel if you would have to multiply the same amount by that. So, yeah, that's that piece. And the final piece, is this a blessing or a poison for these countries? This piece, I asked the user, after like seeing all the exhibition, you could see the benefits for these African countries, since they have, it's like a significant economic improvement they can have. They can get money that would otherwise be much harder to get for them. The question was, what do you think as a visitor? Is this either beneficial for them or not? And I asked them to put a bow on a gift and to put their vote, and either a red one was considered it's poison or silver was a blessing. What was obvious, as you already saw here, most people considered it poison. The full data of that is 41 people considered it poison versus 6 blessings, and 2 people couldn't really decide if it's good or bad, or it was, in their opinion, both good and bad. But the interesting fact is, since I talked with a few of the people who voted, and it was very interesting to see that they looked from this from a very Western perspective, since they saw this is impacting our Western power we are having. They see China as an emerging danger for their own, for their lifestyle they're having right now. But many of them missed the point that this is for if you're an African country, what is the abilities for these countries that they can get. And in often cases, for me at least, I am more of it's a blessing, since they can get things that they would otherwise, it would be very difficult for them to receive. And it was very interesting to see that people are often watching from their own Western perspective, and it's very hard for them to relate themselves to something that they're like not very familiar with. Then the communication, everything in the exhibition was about money really and construction. So I went with the vibe of trying to make money-related communication. So there was like the story video of a gift on a $100 bill, and some other like graphical representations of money and some construction. And then I made some prints which were like the size of like dollar bills, but a bit bigger. And they were like placed in some stores where people could have like, you take some money from China and then come to the exhibition. So then conclusions. So as I said, I had a drastic opinion change during the project, since initially I also was on the boat of this is very bad, what is happening, and after doing all the research, I was not so sure if it's that bad anymore and what's happening. For sure, like from a Western perspective, there are some problems happening. But as I said, if you would really put yourself in the shoes of these other countries, I'm not so sure. I think they have some definite benefits, since they already have often cases a resource-based economy, and they are often very poor. So like, why not let China help them a bit and repay them with resources, which they already rely on anyway to make money. As I said, there were many angles and subtleties in the research, and it was like, as well, like whenever you found one angle of which you think, okay, this is the way of thinking about it, and you found something else and you're not so sure if that was the way of thinking about it, which was like an interesting but very complicated thing to deal with as well. And I wanted to say, like, what's happening has a major impact in the long term of the world, since this has been happening for the past 20 years, but the impact of this infrastructure is gonna last for the next at least 20 years as well, since China's continuously building allegiance, this infrastructure is gonna be there, it's not gonna disappear, so these other countries are also gonna benefit from that. So it's gonna reshape the world in the future into something we don't know yet, and who knows, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. I wanted to give a special thanks to Maria, Pedro, Pau, Clara, and the DDS team in general for all the help they have provided and letting me build a wall in the back of their studio, which was convenient. And yeah, thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much. I think it's very well done and very well explained. I would say that design is not just about aesthetics, it's about understanding. And I really understood what you were saying, and I really enjoy it. And also what I really liked is your final speech. I would say that within your research, within your thinking, you have been able to change your perspective or being more flexible, and that's interesting to hear sometimes when we face this kind of project. So thank you very much. I really like it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Congratulations. It's been really nice and a really meaningful topic that you face with creativity and even some ironic point of view. Nothing else to do. I do really nothing else to say. I would only relate it to your final reflections. And we, as Europeans, at least China, give something, because Europeans for a few years we took everything from them without a gift. So I think that there's a clear reflection, this positive reflection on what does it mean and which is the real interaction with China and these countries, not coming from the Western centralized point of view. So nice, thank you.
And congratulations for the presentation. I think the point that I like the most about your proposal is that you're not declaring that there is a heist, but you are making the point that maybe this could be or not. So it's up to the people that is going to the exhibition to decide by themselves either is one thing or the other. So I think this is the major thing I liked, well, the thing I like the most about your presentation.
I think that maybe it would be a challenge for you to make this final voting to be a little bit more 50% on every part, no? Because maybe there are better ways to explain this and to really make the audience understand your point, no? In that sense, and to also change their minds into that situation, and also maybe you can deepen a little bit more into what is development, no? Because it's not only about the economics and all these, no? That's why I'm not so sure that, yeah, it's a gift. I don't know. I would love to speak about it with you, and I think that that's a very nice thing, no? That it sparkles conversation. So, yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations, Thomas. I must say what I like more about your presentation is your honesty. I enjoy it and appreciate it, and I also, I mean, in a parallel world, I wish I could see the project from the first topic that you discarded, because it's very important. I mean, the role that telling stories, collecting data, etc., around the data centers. I feel like data centers, in terms of our critical infrastructure, when it comes to our very near future, is essentially the sort of invisible territory where everything kind of is happening. It's the combination of energy of all the topics described before around attention, and the agendas of these big data extraction corporations. So I just invite you to explore and track deeper, because I mean there's lots of research. I don't know if you found the SDIA, I think Sustainable Digital Infrastructure Alliance. They have a roadmap for 2030, breaking down the impact of digital infrastructure, making it from a coalition of business, so it's not like from activism. So there's data, but I am aware, because I'm very close to the subject, that one of the big issues is there's data, but there's not a lot of data, and this is of course very, let's say, new and upcoming, but it's the data center war is coming to where the conflict is coming to Europe, as you pointed out. So yeah, that's the parallel thing, and yeah, I mean I I like the honesty again, and but I also have to say that some of the in the presentation, like some graphics were like without labels, with titles. So I feel that was a missed opportunity because it's very, very interesting topic, very relevant, very timely. Similar to the previous one, also I feel it was very, very ambitious. You're trying to cover a lot of things, and also, you know, the bias of the Western perspective and everything that we know and don't know about China, the geopolitics, the assumptions of Africa being like you know, Africa is a whole universe of its own with many countries. So it's very complex. Yeah, I really love the story of. I imagine you building that brick-based graphic. I guess it was fun.
It was very fun. Lots of work. I mean, I'm happy to tell all the details afterwards because it is lots of stories.
Yeah, that's important. So yeah, congratulations.
Okay, so we got to the end of the presentations and the end of the master. Talking about power and empires, I wanted to talk a bit about one of the most ancient powers, that was the Roman Empire. And one of the first civil wars they had was because data, was because information. The thing was that they were doing the census. They were going, the soldiers, home by home, like knocking and saying, hey, how many people do live here? And which kind of religion do you believe in? And this was like a huge war because probably the Jew community didn't want to get datified. They didn't want to be part of the census because their power actually was in not being numbers, in not being translated into something that was quite easy to control, right? So with that, I want to express this idea that I think you have in all the presentations expressed very much, that data and information can be power, and it have an intention in every part of it, right? And I think today you made an impact in the room, and hopefully after this master, you will be able also to do it outside this room in many other places. So big applause for these amazing students.
Yeah, applause for.